Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our August Women in Sectional Title webinar. It's fantastic to have you all here. It's August Women's Month, and I hope that you've enjoyed Women's Month as much as we have at Women in Sectional Title. So there's so many positive things happening lately. I really feel that we're getting back this energy into the air. I smelled jasmine today on my morning walk. Our days are getting longer. So I think in keeping in line with this positive energy, I'm going to make 10 ladies' days a little bit better than they have been. We've got 10 women who will be receiving a 600 Rand Woolworths gift voucher today for being such loyal and stalwart supporters of Women in Sectional Title and for religiously attending our webinars for the last, well, it's been over a year now. So let me tell you, I'm going to read your names out. If I read your name out, you'll be receiving this voucher and we'll be emailing you. So the 10 names are Maria Reker, Yashin Mudli, Sandy Lodder, Shirley Bailey, Des Pat, Helen Marshall, Carol Ann Domingo, Kogi Naidu, Karin Kutsia, and Zelinda van der Merwe. So thank you so much, ladies. We appreciate your support. So I just wanted to convey that appreciation to you, because with the support we're getting, it's just fueling us to go forward and to be able to do webinars like this. So thank you very much. Thank you to our sponsors who made this possible. So we've got Zfin, CIA, Meeting Pal, BCM Track, We Connect You, Sectional Title Solutions, and PKF Octagon. Without your support, we really wouldn't be able to put these webinars together. Thank you very much to our sponsors. Thank you. Thanks, Pete. All right. So today, I really want to get on with this because we've got a lot to talk about. I'm very privileged to have my guest today, Lana Meltzer. Lana has spent many years on an inspired journey, delving deeply into spiritual teachings in order to find the essence of her true self, of who she is. She's taught countless women, particularly here in Gauteng, and she's provided them with tools to live their best and authentic lives. Lana is a wife, a mother of 5 children, a grandmother, and also has had a career in fashion and design and worked in various charities as well. So welcome, Lana. So lovely to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Marina. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
A great pleasure. I've had really good, well, there's a lady who's very special to me, actually, who's on this webinar today, who referred me to you, and I'm so pleased that she did. And this might be one of many, getting together times for us. So let's see how it goes. Right, so Lana, we are women here in the sectional title industry. You've got managing agents, we've got people, trustees and owners who live in sectional title. It's a heck of a stressful environment. Not only do you have to look at one boss, you've got all these unit owners. If something goes wrong, there's always an issue. Coupled with that, you've got financial stress. We've got issues around depression. Incidents of depression have increased. So we need to work out a coping mechanism of not going down in every rabbit hole that presents itself during the day. And I thought it would be wonderful to talk about Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, which is a New York bestseller. And I know you've done workshops on it. So let's dip right in. I suppose we have to start with the question of who we are as human beings, and maybe you can start and take us through your views on that just to begin.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Marina. So I think I'm going to start off, first of all, just inviting everybody to come into a beautiful space where, as you say, coming out of that stressful corporate environment and all the millions of demands that are being placed on you on an external level, and just to come and open yourselves up to a little bit of an internal space, looking more inward and looking at your own personal growth and transformation. So in terms of this amazing book, The Untethered Soul, And I think where we should start is if we define who we are, or try to define rather who we are as human beings, and we think about what is it that makes us up, all the different complex facets that make us up as a human being. So if we start off with our physical essence, because obviously what we see in the exterior world, the superficial world on the external is going to be our body. So we look at who we are in terms of our body. We look in the mirror, we see ourselves. There we are in terms of our physicality. But when we speak about the body in terms of a composite human being, we have to look at what's going on inside the body. So it's not only your physical body, but it incorporates as well as your intellect, which is the brain, your emotions, which is your heart center, and then obviously your blood flow and action that then comes through within the comes through out of the body. So that is what I would call our physical side of our structure. But then there's another entire element that comes into our being, which often, unfortunately, in the world today gets very forgotten. We've got this other entire part of us, which we call our spiritual self. And that spiritual self, it depends on what your reference is in terms of your religiosity or your exposure to spiritual teachings, but it would be what we would call the soul, or your awareness, or your consciousness, or your energy, your inner energy that one feels inside oneself. And, you know, people often live with the misnomer where you think I have a soul, or I have an awareness, I have consciousness, and I have a body. But actually, the way in which we try and redefine ourselves as we go through this book is the recognition that we are actually spiritual beings on a physical journey, and not the other way around, which is often how we mistakenly describe ourselves. We think, oh, this is who I am. I'm this physical being, and I can tap into a little bit of spirituality here and there whenever I feel like it. But the essence of who we are as people resides within our spiritual component. So the truth is that we are these spiritual beings on a physical journey. And I mean, just anecdotally, very interestingly, what comes to mind is I remember a doctor turning around to me once. He's an amazing, amazing doctor who's been on a remarkable spiritual journey himself, which is always so beautiful to see when you see science marrying with spirituality. And I remember him telling me that when he was in medical school, he stood there over a cadaver. They were busy doing a dissection. And he says that was his moment of epiphany, of realization of how the real essence of who we are as a person is not our body, because he stood there looking at this cadaver and thinking, what is the difference between me and this dead body in front of me? I've got a body, he has a body. I have a heart, he has a heart. He has a brain, I have a brain. So what in essence is the difference between us? And the essence really is that soul, that energy, that awareness, that consciousness had left the dead body. So that's really the essence of who we truly are of our being, of who we are, is that spiritual component.
And every day, all day, I don't know about you, but Michael Singer talks about this voice inside your head, and I hear it all day, every day. It's extremely judgmental, very bossy, and usually, you know, trying to kind of maneuver me into different kind of scenarios. And I think your mind can also play tricks on you, and that's what Michael Singer talks about as well. So this chapter 1, what exactly is this voice inside your head?
Okay, so it's absolutely the best place to start, this voice in our head that seems to dominate our lives. I'm sure if most of you think about it, from the moment that you wake up in the morning until the moment that you go to sleep at night, literally incessantly, one has this mental dialogue that is going on in your head that just never stops. Some teachings call it the monkey brain, some call it the wild horse, some call it the quacking duck. In fact, Mo Gawdat, in his book Soul for Happy, if anyone's looking for a wonderful book to read, it's called Soul for Happy. He calls it the quacking duck, and he's actually titled one of his chapters, Shut the Duck Up, which I thought was very, very comical. So the truth is that we have these, scientists have basically proven there's approximately about 70,000 thoughts that go through our brains every single day on average. And unfortunately, most of them are negative. And most of them consist of thoughts of things going on that have already happened in the past, which is our guilt and our regret and our running things over and over in our head about things that have already happened, or anxiety and concern and ruminating about things that may happen in the future. And very, very little of what we think about is centered in the present moment. So we think to ourselves, what on earth are all these thoughts doing in there? Mark Twain also says a hysterical thing. He says, my life was full of tragedies, most of which never happened. So we create this, absolutely, we create this narrative of so much going on inside of our heads. How does it even decide what to say? Is what it says even true? Do we ever stop to think to ourselves, is my brain, what my thinking brain is telling me even true? Is it important? And the worst part is it can even argue with itself. You can sit there presenting both sides of the argument where you're having a conversation inside of your head, arguing with yourself, which is crazy. And no matter how hard you try, it's always talking. And you know, the reality of this voice in our head is that it has an incredible impact on our life, because everything that we feel is based on a thought. Whenever you're feeling something, and you can always trace it back to something that's some kind of narrative that's going on in your head. You know, you can be going in perfect flow through your day and you suddenly feel your energy shift and you find yourself suddenly moody or a little bit ratty. I can guarantee you can trace it back to a thought that's been going on in your head. Some kind of negative story you've been telling yourself, something you've been, a conversation you had with somebody that went badly, whatever it may be. So we have to know that our thoughts determine our experience of reality. This voice in our head is determining our experience. So we have to understand this truth in order to be able to get into our own power and understand what we're supposed to do with it. So, you know, so many people will argue and say, but we have no control over our thoughts. Our thoughts just arrive in our head. I'm not sitting there going and picking up. So it's true. The truth is that most of our thoughts do just arrive in our heads. But we do have a lot of power. With a lot of hard work, I'm not saying that this is easy, we have the power to choose which thoughts we hold on to. We have the power to choose which thoughts we focus on. We have the power to choose which thoughts we encourage and which ones we choose to let go of. So I think this is very powerful. And I'm not saying that it's easy, not for a moment. I think it's a lifetime's work. But what happens is that so often, unfortunately, our tendency is to become a terrorized victim of our endless thoughts, which, as I said, are so often stressed out, insecure, afraid, negative, some form of negativity. So the truth is that when we speak about what is this voice in my head, how do I get away from it? The only way to free ourselves from this incessant chatter is to be able to step back and view it objectively. And that really is the goal of the book, of untethering your soul, to be able to step back into what we call your awareness, your consciousness, then stepping back into the knowledge, knowing that you are not the voice in your head. You are the one that notices the voice in your head. You are the one that hears the voice in your head. You are the one listening to the voice in your head. And that will be the differential between your spiritual being and your physical being. When you can notice and you can unidentify with the voice in your head and step back, that's when you'll be starting to get more into a spiritual space.
And Lana, I think also Michael Singer is really adamant that we understand the concept of being the driver and being at the seat, literally watching and observing and being conscious of that voice and understanding that actually that's not who you are. You way in the background, you know, you just an observer, actually, you're watching. And that helped me also to kind of put this whole concept together.
Completely. So the truth is there is nothing more important to your true personal growth than realizing that your true essence is not the voice of the mind. To be able to step back into that space and really, really view it objectively. To know that the real you is actually the one who hears it, the one who watches it. I don't know if everybody here, like I hope this is making sense to everybody. I'm not sure if everybody's actually read the book, but if I can take you into just one moment, if you kind of just center yourself on your chair just for a moment, this is what Michael does in the book, which is just a wonderful example. Put both feet onto the ground. And if you can just close your eyes, I'm not going to put you into meditation. Don't worry, I'm not getting all airy-fairy with you, but really just to put your both feet onto the ground and to just take 1 or 2 deep breaths in through your nostrils. Can breathe out through your mouth, and then I'm going to give you some. So just breathe in through your nose Breathe out through your mouth. Just center your energy in your breath. And now I want you to start saying inside your head, shout the word hello inside your head. Shout it again. So now the question becomes, who is saying hello and who is the one that is hearing you saying hello? So you'll say, who's saying hello? And you'll answer, well, it's me. And you'll go, but who's hearing me say hello? Well, it's also me. So we get into trying to have some kind of experience of the fact that we have all these thoughts that are going through our head, but actually we're just observing them. We are just watching them. And the recognition that these millions and millions of our thoughts that are going through our head are mostly irrelevant, and they don't really have too much effect on anyone or anything except what's going on inside of your head. So we can sit there all day. You can take something that you're concerned about, like, is it going to, a silly example, is it going to rain today? Isn't it going to rain today? Well, if it rains, and then what am I going to do? And then how am I going to get there? And do I need to take an umbrella? You can sit and you can run a million thoughts through your head about whether or not it's going to rain, what the consequences are going to be, but it's never going to change the fact whether or not it's going to rain. It's not going to change the rain. It's just something that is going on inside of our heads. So what Michael Singer says that we do, he says we create this personal construct. He says because we can't control the world outside of ourselves, what we try and do is recreate the world inside of ourselves. Did I say that the right way around? We don't control the world outside of ourselves, so we try and recreate the world inside of ourselves to make us feel safe, to make us feel secure, to make us feel like we're in control of things that are going on. So we're actually creating like this personal construct. It's not even really what's going on out there, but we're trying to create something that we can feel comfortable with. And what happens then is that's when all the problems come, because we can't make up what's going on. And at the end of the day, it rings true of everything in life. And you'll see how much of it impacts once you become aware that the real cause of problems is not life itself. It's the commotion that our mind and our heart and our body and our reactivity is making about life that really causes all the problems. We create so much suffering for ourselves. And he always, Michael Singer has a wonderful line that I heard in one of his interviews a while ago, where he says, the moment in front of you is not bothering you. You are bothering yourself about the moment in front of you.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I like that. But so we, at the end of the day, and a lot of the religions, and I know for a fact Buddhism, for example, will say that we're here on earth and we're actually suffering. So it's a daily thing where we're facing these things and hitting our heads all the time. So from a practical point of view, Lana, how do we actually become more conscious? How do you, if people have to leave this webinar today, what do you think, how do we avoid getting trapped into this whole mind-body identification issue?
Okay, so the reality is that it is an absolute journey, because one has to start off firstly becoming conscious of both, I would say, the voice in your head, where the voice in your head translates into the emotions, knowing that I'm not the voice of my head, I'm not my emotions, I'm just the experiencer of my emotions. So once you become aware of that, how do we stop the suffering that you speak about? The truth is it's all about letting go. And how do we do that? We have to just stop narrating our lives in a way in which our consciousness is getting lost in the narration. We have to try and find ways where we can sit back and we can try and consciously observe what is going on in our world and try and transcend that part of ourselves that is just not okay. So how do we do that on a practical level? So the greatest tool that we will ever have in our lives is through breath. And actually, I mean, it's the most magnificent thing how grounding breath can be for us, because you can find yourself in the midst of a circling the brain going on in your head, all the negative emotions that are coming with it. And if you just stop yourself and you consciously observe your breath, it will take you into a place where you can disidentify with the mind and with the emotion. And you can try and step back, as you said, into that beautiful seat of self, to try and isolate yourself from the busy streets of your mind and the torment of your heart in order to be able to and find that inner connection. And it really is something that only comes through practice. It's something that's easy to say and very hard to really experience, especially when you're in the midst of a day. It's one thing to say, oh, go and meditate on a mountaintop where you've got nothing pushing up against you, no stresses, no resistance to anything. And that's all good and wonderful, but we have to learn how to do it in our everyday life. So what Michael brings into the book, which I love, is that he brings in trigger points. He says you've got to set for yourself trigger points during your day. It could be if you're a person who's in the car a lot, traveling a lot to see maybe different agents, or you're running around doing kids' school lifts or whatever it may be. He'll say, set for yourself times. Maybe it's as you get into the car. You literally have to take for yourself a single deep conscious breath in order to recenter yourself and re-acknowledge that your essence of being is your consciousness and your awareness. And that you are just going on this, your consciousness is coming with you on this physical journey, whatever it is that you're going off to be doing, but to keep recognizing and reminding yourself not to get caught and get trapped in whatever it is, and keep yourself in the present moment. I actually had a wonderful example of this yesterday morning. I've had a little bit of like stiffness of my neck when I sleep. So we haven't been sleeping necessarily so well. The other morning I woke up, it was 4:23. So I lean over and I look at my clock on the wall and I think, no, I can't, it's 4:23 is a ridiculous time, you can't get up. But my neck was worrying me and the choice factor was taken out. So I had to get out of bed. So I came downstairs and I made myself a cup of tea and I was just busy and I was doing stuff. And my husband walks down a little while later and says to me, what are you doing up at this time of the morning? And I said to him, I just couldn't sleep. And he says, but it's like you're going to be exhausted. I said, you know what? In the present moment, right now, I feel absolutely fabulous. I am wide awake. I've actually got a lot to do. I'm going to sit at my computer and catch up on some work that I need to do. I feel absolutely fine. But what I could have done in the moment is I could have made a problem out of the moment. So what I could have done is say to myself, oh, I had the most terrible night's sleep. Oh, this is the nightmare. I was turning from side to side and I couldn't sleep. Or I could sit there and ruminate, I'm going to be so exhausted later. How am I going to get everything done that I need to get done? So that's what we call our internal suffering, is where we're pushing ourselves and ruminating and creating all these constructs in our head and creating a narrative that actually makes our life miserable. We're actually in the present moment, you're absolutely fine if you can just keep yourself in the present moment. So the minute those thoughts start come flooding into your head, you've got to take a breath. You've got to step back into your witness consciousness, is what we like to call it, and actually ground yourself in the present moment. And then it immediately removes yourself away from that narrative.
Lana, there are two things I also want to discuss with you. The one is that decision, and then we're talking about energy. So first of all, the thing that struck me very much about the book, I really enjoyed it, was that actually you need to just take the decision. It's your choice. You can, even the ladies on this webinar today, perhaps it's a good thing to read the book first. But once you've read the book, or if you don't decide to read the book, you can always just sit in that chair and decide from now, even from this minute on, that this is, you are going to untether that soul. You're going to decide to take that present moment into account. And by doing that, you're kind of moving more towards the spirituality side. And as he says, move upwards. So that lifting up and moving up, transcending, rising above challenges. Talk us through that decision-making power.
So I think the biggest thing is that one needs to be able to sit and honestly look at oneself in the mirror and say to oneself, do I find myself living constantly in light and in flow and not getting hassled by things that happen? You know, that person that just kind of is able to, you know, there's certain people in the world where you'll come to a wall and there's certain people that will bash their head against the wall, and then you've got people who'll either find their way around the side of the wall, they'll jump over the wall, they'll find a way to be in the flow, to be. So if you are not, which most of us unfortunately are not, finding ourselves constantly in flow, able to accept all the different hiccups that get thrown at us during our day with equanimity, with, you know, that real concept of inner calm, which unfortunately most of us don't, then we need to say to ourselves, honestly, is this the way that I want to carry on living? Like something small happens and you can create it into this massive narrative. It can be anything. It can be your friend lets you down. It can be your bosses being arrogant. It can be that your husband forgets your anniversary. So your husband can forget your anniversary and you still have the ability to be okay with it if you choose to be okay with it. So what can happen? Yes, okay, of course we'd be a little bit disappointed. We'd be inhuman if we weren't, but that's a feeling and that's okay. And it's okay to feel disappointed. But what we do is we take that feeling and then we start the link with the narrative in the brain and we start to go, oh my gosh, he's so selfish. He's always so selfish and he never thinks about me and he's never, and this is the way the relationship is always going and it's always me who and he doesn't love me and this is going to end terribly. And why does her husband always remember her anniversary? And I know she said her and my other friend, she got a ring for her anniversary. This is what we do inside of our, and the more upset we are, as you were saying of speaking about energies, so the more the energy builds in us, so the more the electricity starts to flow in that link between the voice in our head and the emotions, and so it builds and it builds on itself, and that is how we create suffering for ourselves. So what we do is we're not prepared to accept events for what they are. And we resist it. That's that resistance, which is really what creates so much of the suffering. So it's really a very easy decision. And I would say that anybody here who wouldn't want to decide it must be crazy, because who doesn't want to live with that peace in your soul, with that sense of calm in your inner being, with that okayness, with the isness of life? Because life is what it is, and we don't have control over the outside world. So how can I change my inner world in order to learn to be okay with what is? Things happen. Things are always going to happen. Nothing goes smoothly. Everybody's going to hit bumps in the road, some more serious than others. But how do we find that space, that attachment to our own inner connection, that attachment to our consciousness, knowing that these are just things that happen? These are just thoughts that I'm having. These are just feelings that I'm feeling. But that is not who the real me is. And I can sink back into that peacefulness. I can sink back into that spiritual state. That really is, at its essence, Marina, what's called a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening is when we wake up that seat of self and we put that as the driving force, as the commanding force in our life. And we don't allow ourselves to be pulled by all these other external objects or that pull us in a million different directions. And we rather keep going back to that consciousness.
So Lana, I'd like to read from chapter 19, which is actually my favorite chapter in the book. I'm talking about peace and talking about when you've made that decision. It says, imagine if every child seemed like your own, and every person you saw looked like a beautiful flower with its own color, its own expression, shape, and sound. As you went deeper and deeper, you would start noticing a phenomenal thing. You are no longer judging. The process of judging has simply stopped. There is just appreciating and honoring. Where there used to be judging, there is now respecting, loving, and cherishing. To differentiate is to judge. To see, to experience, and to honor is to participate in life instead of standing back and judging it. That hit me. Sure, that really, really hit me, I must say. And because it's so easy every day, you're facing these situations where you want to fix that. Why are they not working as fast as they should? Why is this happening? Why are there potholes? What's going on? Instead of just flowing, which I think you were talking about.
Yes, absolutely. So that judgmental voice in our head is in some ways our greatest enemy, because that's the start of the whirlpool that pulls us down. So the main consciousness that we need to have is to try and remain rooted in the present moment. The truth is that the past no longer exists, and the future, we have absolutely no idea what that's going to hold. So we can't be irresponsible. People will say, well, it's all very good and well that you keep sinking back into this non-judgmental, everything's okay in the world. Oh, I'm wonderful. Everything's wonderful. There are things that need to be done in the world. So that is really, the truth is that is what our brain is for. Our brain is for dealing with the mechanical functions of what we need to do out in the world, while staying seated in our seat of self. What happens when we say we got lost is when that consciousness gets pulled into the problem, when our consciousness gets pulled into whatever it is, that object of our focus. But what we are trying to do is we're trying to remain in a space where no matter what is going on around us, we can go through our day and carry on and perform everything mechanically perfectly. But it's about us not getting that internal arousal, negative arousal that happens within us, while still being perfectly productive and wonderful in doing what we need to do, sometimes even doing very difficult things, but not letting it affect our internal consciousness, and always reminding ourselves. So you could have somebody says something incredibly hurtful to you, or somebody does something so irresponsible in your business. It's how do I stay seated in my objective, observing, witness consciousness while dealing with the issue that's going on in front of me.
So how do you do it? How do you do it? I want to know how you do it, actually, because the breathing is one thing, but what if you don't really have time to breathe, or you've got to react to something? How do you deal with that?
So the reality is that one doesn't have to react to anything, because we shouldn't be reacting to anything in life. We are high-level beings. We should be responding to everything. So if we allow ourselves, the biggest thing in our life is to allow ourselves a pause. We live in a very reactive, very, I would say, not very compassionate world. And if we just, first of all, bring pauses in, we do not have to respond immediately. You know, some people live with the consciousness that unless something is dealt with that second, then it's like there's a problem. No, we can step back and we can actually go into our awareness ourselves. It's an internal mind game that you are playing, mind and soul game, I would say, that you're playing with yourself. Pause in the moment. Pause in the moment and think, what is my high-level response at this moment? How can I deal with this coming from a place where I've got my consciousness in control? You've got to actually stop and ask yourself that question. If something's urgent and immediate or dangerous, obviously one has to deal with it. But first of all, you've got to bring pauses into your day. You've got to bring breath into your day. You've got to look at what thoughts are serving you and what thoughts are just part of the negative construct. Because so much of what's going to come into your brain, say your secretary does something or forgets to do something, and your habitual, what I call your homeostasis reaction, is going to be to go into all the things she's ever done wrong in the past, and you're going to create this furor out of the one thing that is a problem today. How do I remain rooted in the thing that is in front of me right now? And how am I able in my internal world to step back and not to get my consciousness pulled into the narrative, pulled into the emotion, and stay seated in myself while I'm dealing with it?
Singer also says, Lana, that when you see pain or when you feel pain, you need to visualize it as energy, which helps. And this energy concept is quite intriguing for me, because also they talk about depression being blocked energy. Exactly. And Singer's view is of openness. Talk to us through that.
Okay, so the root of everything in our life is essentially really energy. I mean, if you think it's the most amazing thing, he brings a beautiful example in the book, which I loved, which he says, do you know how you feel when you're feeling completely, you maybe just met somebody new in your life and you're feeling in love, and, 5 minutes before you were feeling completely, or the day before you were completely depleted and exhausted. Now you've met somebody, suddenly you can stay up all night, you don't feel 1 ounce of tiredness, you feel this unbelievable well of energy come up inside of you. And so too in the opposite, let's just say you've broken up with somebody and you can find yourself completely depressed, completely depleted, you can't get out of bed, you can't move. What is it that creates the energy, and what is it that depletes the energy? And the essence of what he brings is, he calls it, what we do is we block our hearts. We don't allow energy to flow through us. So much of what we are afraid of is that when we start to feel a feeling of, say, of insecurity, or a feeling of being afraid, or I feel embarrassed, or whatever that emotion is, what it is it comes in and we don't want to face it, so we hold it within ourselves, and it creates blockages in our heart center, and it builds up almost like a dam. So we have all these blockages that come in and that are not released out of us. And what that does is that it depresses our energy. These blocked heart centers are really what causes us to feel depleted, to feel depressed, because we don't allow the energy to flow through us. So we suppress events, we suppress the emotion we feel around events. And the essence of what he's trying to guide us through in the book is for us not to be so afraid. In fact, I think if any of us, I don't know if anybody would have read this book, an unbelievable book called The Exquisite Mind. It's written by Sid Banks, who's the founder of the 3 Principles. And one of the quotations that Sid Banks brings, which is so wonderful, I know I've got it, I wrote it down somewhere here. He says, I'll just remember my version of it, but he basically says, if people weren't just so afraid of their experiences, that would solve half the problems of the world. We're so afraid, like we start to feel a lonely feeling or an anxious feeling or an insecure, and we suppress the feeling. What most people in the world do today, unfortunately, is they distract themselves, because distraction is the name of the game. You don't have to face yourself. You just pick up your iPhone, or you put on Netflix and you sit on whatever it may be, because it's too hard to have to face ourselves. And the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves is to actually just be present and to be accepting and to kind of place your hand on your heart, and you can say to yourself, right now, I feel very lonely. And just be okay with the feeling, to actually acknowledge it. We do have to validate feelings. We don't have to validate thoughts, because thoughts are really our own construct. But if feeling comes into it, it does require validation and acceptance. Otherwise, what we do is we start to create that blockage. And that blockage, when it's not released, is really what is the source of so many of our problems, because what happens is that triggers come along later in life, and we are constantly being triggered by the same things because we haven't released that energy. So it's okay to say, you know, when you're sitting in a space of I'm feeling lonely, don't start now going into your head and saying, I feel so lonely and I'm never going to get married, and why is everybody else married and I'm the only person, I'm going to be on my own forever. It's okay. Just let go. We've got to cut the link between the narrative and just be in the emotion. And then we need to sit back again in the seat of self and observe and accept that emotion, because the quicker we accept it, the easier it will be to release it. And that's when we'll start to feel our full flow present energy going through us, when we're not resisting. It's when we're resisting all the time that's what causes a depression of our energy.
Not only depression, I suppose, but how would you feel with the proposition that this blocked energy causes various illnesses?
Absolutely. Dis-ease. The word disease is called dis-ease. It's about the dis-ease within our own body, between the connection between the mind, the emotion, the body. That is really the source of where all of our illness is coming from this dis-ease that is happening, where we are not okay with ourselves. And I think so much of our stress and so much of what we create in our own heads is a huge contributor towards that, which at its essence, I mean, we all know that's not the road we want to be going down. So this is something just to, the more we get into these teachings and the more we start to experience what it is to actually free ourselves, so to speak, to untether our souls and to actually get into more space of openness. And, you know, it's only our self, that composite self that we create, that stops us from reaching that place. And we want to get past the ego and past the brain and past all these blockages in order for us to be able to experience all the beautiful feelings that one feels when you feel compassion and you feel empathy and you feel love for strangers and you feel open to anything, and somebody does something wrong and you're okay with it. We all make mistakes. Rather than flying, you want to be that person that's in flow, that person that deals with things calmly. That is really, and it serves you, and it serves all your relationships and everybody around you, and it can only benefit. I mean, and we want to be in that space, that place of light and that place of positive energy, not getting sucked in all the time.
I think that's important, and it's not so easy sometimes when you're dealing with difficult trustees in a building, or you're dealing with owners who can't resolve their disputes. In fact, I think what would be a great idea would be to give a book to everybody corporate to just randomly, pass around, to owners, because living in close proximity also causes great tensions. And from my point of view, mediation, that's why mediation works better in these complexes, because it is a quiet space where people can actually discuss their issues calmly without getting involved in litigation and without getting involved in this kind of horrible dispute resolution. So I feel strongly about mediation, which I think comes out of this space. One last thing, Lana, there's some people who are a bit nervous about getting involved with spirituality as opposed to being religious. From a cultural point of view, you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Just tell us how spirituality fits into all of this.
So I would say stop labeling. I think that's the biggest problem. So much of our spirituality out in the world today has become a human construct and not a construct of, and not what's the word, revelation of what actually is. So the truth is, you can't deny it. It's there whether we like it or not, but you don't have to label it. You can just start to go on your own little exploratory journey of trying to find some deeper, higher place within oneself. You can, you know, if you want to, you don't have, some people have a problem with the word God. You can call it infinite light. You can call it that being with a capital B, the ultimate being of it. You can call it the ultimate wisdom of the universe. You can call it energy of the universe. You can call the whatever you want, whatever it is that resonates for you and you feel comfortable with on your journey. You have this part of you inside of yourself. Some people will call it the soul. Some people will call it, as you said, the Shakti or the Chi or the energy or the awareness or the consciousness or the seat of self. It really doesn't matter what you call it. The reality stays the same. We have got this something, this spiritual side inside each and every one of us that cannot be denied. And the more you deny it, the more that you're going to not allow yourself to open up into space that is so beautiful and so inviting and so where we all actually want to be, even if we don't really know what it's called. So I would say, don't label. Just let yourself go on a journey. If you haven't opened up the Untethered Soul, open up the Untethered Soul. Start to take yourself on the journey. Start to put yourself into the practice of it. We think that so many things are beyond our control, and we think that our happiness lies out there in the world. But happiness doesn't come to us. It comes from within us. And the more that we start to find these inner realizations, and the more we start to tap into this beautiful part of life and light and love and positive energy, we can only start to realize that whatever this is, it doesn't need to have a name. I just want more of it. Give me more of it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Lana, thank you so very, very much. I could actually sit and talk to you all day. And Lynn Panensky, if you're listening there, I promise you this was really worthwhile. And we're certainly going to bring Lana back, hopefully another time, and take questions, because sometimes you might be thinking something or wanting to ask something. So let us know if you'd like to continue this journey. And every now and then, between all our sectional title learnings, we're going to put this, because for me, it's equally, if not more important than all the theory that we learn every day. So just before we go, I wanted to reiterate that we are giving away 10 600 Rand Woolworths vouchers donated to us from our sponsors. If you weren't on at the beginning, these are the people that won: Maria Raker, Yoshin Mudli, Sandy Lodder, Shirley Bailey, Des Pat, Helen Marshall, Caroline Domingo, Kogi Naidu, Karin Kutsia, and Zelinda van der Merwe. We appreciate you. We appreciate your support. I'd like to just say one very last thing to you guys is we need to continue learning, try to rise above the challenges that we face, try to refine what we do every day and utilize these tools. And do yourself a favor, go and get this book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's well worth it. For me, it was life-changing. And yeah, just continue to be a phenomenal woman. Keep going, keep moving forward, and get in touch with us. We really, really would love to hear from you. And thank you again. Thank you, Lana. Oh, thank Lana, you, one last thing I wanted to ask. 5 children. I've got one daughter, and I've like just kept it together. You know, maybe we need to do a webinar just on that.
Oh, absolutely, with pleasure. Greatest gift to the world, but again, we have to learn how to manage it. You know, one has to be able to approach parenting also from a point of equanimity. It applies in every level of our life. I just want to finish off with one thing before you go, Marina, is that there's a chapter in the book called The Path to Unconditional Happiness. And you could turn around, any one of us would turn around in our logical brain and say, unconditional happiness, happiness no matter what. And we think that's impossible. All these things are going to come up in my life that are going to make me unhappy. So I invite everybody to go on this journey to try and find what is that path to unconditional happiness and how can we refine it, because we think it's not in refine it. We think it's not in our control, but the truth is that so much of it really is. So I bless us all. We should be able to open up our hearts and our souls and our minds and be able to expand into a much, much greater sense of awareness in enhancing each and every one of our lives.
Thank you so much, Lana. Thank you for everything. We really appreciate it. And thank you for your lovely messages. Have an awesome rest of Women's Month. Take it right to the end and then throughout the year. Thank you. We'll see you next month. Thank
Thanks,
you. Bye-bye.
Marina. Bye.
Bye.